All right, hello there, thrill seekers. I would like to present to you today a koan that I thought was real interesting and kind of relates to the moldy oldie that I put up on Monday about whether Buddhism was a religion or not. The koan appears in Master Dogen's Shinji Shobogenzo as the second koan. So I'm going to read you first the Nishijima translation, Nishijima Roshi with Michael Lutchford and Jeremy Pearson translation and commentary, and then I'll look at John Daido Lori's. Master Obaku Kiyun on Mount Obaku in the Ko district asked Master Hyakujo Ekai, "When I want to share with others the teachings that you have given us, how should I teach them?" Master Hyakujo Ekai just remained seated on his cushion without saying anything. Obaku Kiyun said, "How can I teach the sons and grandsons of disciples in the future?" Master Hyakujo said, "What you have said shows that you are a real person." And Nishijima Roshi's commentary on that goes, "This koan is similar to the story of Sarka Devanam Indra, who asked the Buddha, 'How can I protect those who wish to practice the Dharma?' The Buddha replied by asking, 'Can you see the Dharma that you wish to protect? Where is it?' The desire to protect the Dharma is like the desire to protect space itself. Buddhist practitioners protect the Dharma and themselves by living in the truth." Master Obaku's first question was an abstract one. He wanted to know the best way to convey the intellectual content of his master's teachings. Master Hyakujo's answer was similar to the Buddha's, but more direct. Master Hyakujo answered by presenting his own Buddhist practice, by continuing to sit in zazen. Master Obaku understood the intent of his master's behavior. He then asked a more concrete question. How could he transmit the teachings to those in the future with whom he would have no direct contact? In reply, Master Hyakujo simply said that Obaku's understanding of his master's actions, along with his concern for future disciples, showed that he was a man who lived in reality. Master Hyakujo was pleased that Obaku could shift from the level of abstract philosophy to a more practical and realistic level of concern for his fellow disciples and their descendants. He had no doubts about Master Obaku's ability to solve his problem. So that's the Nishijima and Cross version, and that's the one I want to talk about, but since we have it, and I've talked about this already, I'm going to read you the version from John Daido Lori. Well, translated by, I assume the koans are translated by Kazuaki Tanahashi, and the commentaries by John Daido Lori. So they are using the Chinese names of the same masters, but they're the same two people, so we're going to hear the Chinese names. Zen Master Jiun of Mount Huangbo asked his teacher, Baizhang Huaihai, "How can we explain the teaching that has been handed down?" Baizhang remained seated in silence. Huangbo said, "If so, what will people in the future receive?" Baizhang said, "They will say that you are a true person." He then returned to the abbot's room. And John Daido Lori's commentary is, "The true person is rankless and rootless and does not fall into the holy or mundane. Tell me, what is Baizhang pointing to? Is it that the teaching handed down cannot be explained, or did he indeed explain it by remaining silent?" Baizhang's response to Huangbo's question is neither here nor there. If you take it as not responding, remaining seated, or silently answering, you have missed Baizhang's teaching. I don't know about that, but that's Daido Lori's version. Daido Lori seems to be much more interested in Baizhang's response. Hyakujo. Hyakujo's response, Baizhang's response, same guy, two different names. Then in what Obaku says and what Huangbo says to, or what, I'm getting the names mixed up. What Hyakujo says to Obaku. That's what I'm used to calling them. Obaku is Huangpo, who I've talked about on this channel a lot. So this is real interesting. To me, this koan is super interesting, and it's very short, but I think it presents a very wide-ranging kind of bunch of issues. So I'm going to see what I can say about them in just a few minutes. Now, I said in that clip I showed from years ago, the one I put up on Monday, that I don't think Buddhism is a religion. And some people were asking me, well, how would I say it differently today? And let's see if we can get into that. So let's look at this koan again. When I want to share with others the teachings that you have given us, how should I teach them? That's what Obaku asks, and Hyakujo remains silently sitting on his cushion without saying anything. Now, try to imagine if you were to ask somebody from what we normally think of as a religion that same sort of question. If you asked a Presbyterian minister, when I want to share the teachings that you have given us, how should I teach them? I think you'd get a much more straightforward answer, well, seemingly straightforward. I think Hyakujo's answer is very straightforward. But you'd get an answer that dealt with beliefs, rituals, codes of ethics, rules. Various religions have different rules for diet and dress. If you're Jewish or Muslim, you're not supposed to eat pork or shellfish. Those sorts of things. If you're a Christian Scientist, you're not supposed to have surgery, I think, or go to a doctor. If you're Seventh-day Adventist, you're not supposed to eat meat. Lots of things like that. You'd hear all those things. Most specifically, a set of beliefs. So you would be given a belief system. And that's what religions are all about. Well, when Obaku asked Hyakujo, his teacher, his Zen Buddhist teacher, what his religion, if we're going to use that word, is about, he just sits there, silently, and manifests the religion itself. He does it. He shows it. He demonstrates it. And that's the part I'm not sure what John Daido Loria is saying about that part, but that's the part John Daido Loria is focusing on. He's demonstrating the religion. I don't think there's any mystery about it. You could try to delve into it the way Lori Roshi is doing, but I don't think that's really necessary. So that makes it altogether different from a religion. You are talking about something that is much more mysterious, I would think, if we want to go with that sort of phraseology, than a religion in the way that we usually understand what religions are. But the second part is also really important, and it's the part that Daido Lori seems to ignore, which I don't understand. But Obaku says, well, how am I going to teach the distant ancestors this? People who aren't right here to see the two of us interacting together about this. How am I going to transmit it to them? How am I going to transmit it to future generations? And Hyakujo praises him by saying, this shows you're a real person. This shows that you have a grasp on what's important. And that is, to me, the big question. The big question that I often get asked that I struggle to answer is, what is Zen, or what is Buddhism? It's a little dangerous. I don't know if dangerous is really the word I want to use. But if I say Buddhism, I am following the tradition of my own teacher, Nishijima Roshi, and Dogen, and the ancestors between the two of them, in insisting that what we are teaching is Buddhism. And it doesn't need to be called Zen Buddhism or changed in any way. This is Buddhism. Now, if I say that, in the modern sort of American context, it gets all sorts of responses about people getting upset that I'm insulting other Buddhists, or I'm going to try to go burn down their monasteries or whatever, or have a I don't know, ethnic cleansing of them or some sort of thing, because that's what's happened in our own history with statements like that. But in Buddhist history, we don't have any examples of that. So it's not it's not something we're really concerned about. So we just say this is Buddhism, and we insist that it's Buddhism without, going that step further and deciding to just, eliminate all those who disagree with us, because that's not what we do. But it raises the question of, how do we teach this? And that, to me, has been a very basic question I won't say all my life, but basically ever since Nishijima Roshi, my teacher, made me a teacher of this stuff. Because how do I teach this? There is a sense in which you could say Buddhism, and even Zen Buddhism, has its set of beliefs, rituals, code of ethics, and rules. You could say that. But those are kind of, I think of them as carriers of the actual teaching. So it's something that has come about through what I've called in the past research and development. So if you want to try to teach this ineffable something that we are trying to convey from master to disciple, if we want to use words like that, and you want to do it in a way that is universal, then you're going to have to figure out how to do it. If it's just me talking to one person or two, as Bodhidharma did, for students, we can kind of just make it up as we go along, and we can just fiddle with it and talk to each other in person about what specific difficulties we're having, and we can interact like that. And that works in that context. But if you want to make it a bigger thing, if you want to have the San Francisco Zen Center, for example, I'm not trying to pick on them, or some big center like that, then or a Heiji monastery in Japan where Dogen taught, for example, you're going to have to come up with a more universal way of doing things. And somebody had asked in the comments, if Buddhism is not a religion, or Zen Buddhism is not a religion, then why do we do all these rituals and ceremonies? Why do monks shave their heads and wear the robes and all this other stuff if it's not a religion? Well, it's because you're trying to find a more universal way to teach this stuff that works for a wide range of people from different backgrounds with different specific problems, different genders, different races, different whatever, ethnicities, classes, all those sorts of things, where you don't actually know each other face to face and have a relationship directly. You're going to have to kind of figure out a way, a carrier for this thing. But is Zen Buddhism in its essence all those rituals and the shaved heads and the chanting and so forth and so on, and the temples and the whatever specific forms you can think of that come along with it? And I would say no. Those things are just a kind of carrier for it. They're ways that various people have worked out to try to make this teaching, I don't know what the hell he's barking at now, universal, and, as Obaku puts it, teach the sons and grandsons of disciples, and could be the daughters and granddaughters of disciples in the future. How do we convey it to them? And that, to me, is an ongoing question. In my own practice, I've tried different ways. When I first started teaching this, when I very first started teaching this, I was kind of saddled with Nishijima Roshi's format that he had established in Japan for decades, because he asked me to do it in his stead. He said he didn't want to do those Saturday afternoon lectures anymore, and would I take over? So I had that format already established, and I had to do it like that. When I moved back to the United States, I've tried different ways. I was teaching at the Hill Street Center in Santa Monica, where for a while I actually lived in the place. So people were coming into what was more or less my living room and coming and sitting. And my attitude at that time was, I sit Zazen every day, and on Saturdays I open the doors and let strangers come in and join me. And to me, so far, that has been the most comfortable way of doing it. I tried to do the Zen Center thing, and to me, it just wasn't working. When I tried to be the named as the guiding teacher of a Zen center, it didn't work for me, because it was too much. There was too much democracy. I know that sounds terrible to Americans, but it became a kind of thing where I was just one voice among many trying to do this. And when you're teaching, it is very rare to have more than one person who is actually qualified to teach this stuff in any single geographical location at any single time. It has happened, a few times in the past where there was more than one, But when you enter into sort of democratic ideas of Americans, they're like, oh, we all have to decide this, and there was too much of that groupthink going on, and it doesn't work that way, in my humble opinion. So this question that Robaku has of how to teach it, I honestly don't know. I don't think it has to look a specific way. It doesn't have to look like a Zen center with an orange robe and a shaved head and all of that. Obviously, I don't think that it has to look like that, but it should share some aspects of the teaching as it has been passed down from teacher to disciple for 2,500 years. So that's the answer that I have so far, and what it is no answer at all. The answer is this is an open question. And one of the things I think that's important for me to do in my personal position, in my personal practice, and what I'm doing here with this YouTube channel and with my various tours and books and whatever other teaching I do, is to resist those forces who do want to codify it into something. Like there are organizations, there are two that I'm not going to name, but there are two organizations in the United States who, as far as I can tell, are trying to turn Zen into something that is very codified, that looks a certain way, that you need certain qualifications to teach, and you need to teach in a certain format and make it like that, and that they are also trying to establish themselves as arbiters of what is and isn't acceptable, so that you'll have to join their organization if you want to be seen as a legitimate Zen teacher, and then they're going to decide who is legit and who isn't, and these things always sound good when you're on the side of the same side as the people who are making the decisions. But once you run afoul of them, as a lot of people are finding out on social media platforms and things, it doesn't sound so great to give people that kind of authority. So I don't think we should have those kind of sitting authorities in Zen in America who are going to decide what is and is not Zen. And I think if more Zen people would study, like really study this koan, which is very short, they might be able to understand why that sort of thing is a problem, why trying to codify it and turn it into something rigid is going to be a problem. So there you go. That's my little editorial on that. If you want to contribute to me making more editorials like this, you can go to the URL you are seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are pretty much my only way of making a living, and I really appreciate your support. But as always, this is offered for freezels. Free! That ad that keeps coming up every time you look at YouTube. And free. I hate that ad. Anyway, it's free. So, you don't got to pay if you don't want to pay. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Remember, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. Hey Ziggy, you enjoying the sunbeam? They say it's supposed to get hot later. Well, you can enjoy the sunbeam now. Alright. Have a good nap.